What's up, everybody? It is Jared with Capture the Magic, and in today's video, I finally got to ride Battle at the Ministry. Finally. After technically 4 attempts to do this, finally got to ride it as we were there on opening day. So I'm going to give my thoughts on the queue, the ride itself, and where I would rank this in terms of not only rides at Epic Universe, but rides overall in all the theme parks that I have ridden and been to myself. So that's what we're going to do here today. So for those who may not know, I'm going to go ahead and just set the stage for what this ride is, where it's taking place, and things like that. So the Ministry of Magic in Epic Universe is set in 1920s Paris. And this ride takes place in the 1990s original Harry Potter timeline. So the land is based in a different time period than the ride itself. Now, obviously, I think that's because they were going to do this ride based off the Fantastic Beast, but those movies did not do very well. So the land got based off of that, but the ride was based off of the original, Harry Potter timeline, because obviously those are the characters that people know and love. So this is where the ride is based off of. So before you actually enter into the Ministry of Magic portion of the ride, part of the queue is in this subway. It's the Metro Flu. So you go through this and it's themed very much like you're going through a subway. It kind of just definitely sets that up as you are entering into a transportation system and getting ready to whisk you away into this other world, this other place. So when you go through the Metro Flu, they have these green lights that kind of shoot up. There's smoke, and then you kind of have stuff in your face, and all of a sudden you're in the Ministry of Magic. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It needs a little bit of a delay between each person going through for this to work. It's a cool effect to obviously try and take you from 1920s timeline to a 1990s timeline of the idea of going through this Metro Flu. So that's sort of the idea and how they merge these two worlds. So you travel from 1920s Paris through the Metro Flu to end up in 1990s British Ministry of Magic. And the queue itself it's insane.
Oh my goodness. Holy cow. Hello. Oh my goodness. This thing is huge. I can't even really describe how big this is. Oh my goodness. This is insane.
When you have giant statues, you have the storm on the ceiling, you have a giant banner of Dolores Umbridge that's one of those animated banners of she's going on trial, and the scale of this building, everything going on in here is the most impressive thing I've seen in a queue ever in a ride. I mean, undoubtedly, I have never seen a queue built this large, because most theme parks are going to do forced perspective on many levels. This is not forced perspective. This is things built massively. Like, you are in here, and if you've seen this from the movies, it looks almost identical to what they've shown in the movies, and it's very, very impressive. The pictures, I mean, yeah, those look great, but when you actually go in here, it's just the scale of it and everything, the details. It takes you a minute to sort of like process it all. Like, I've never seen anything on this scale in a ride queue. So the queue itself, before you even get to the ride, is a 10 out of 10. I mean, there's no other ride queue like this. The queue alone is worth an experience to just check it out. Now, the closest thing to a queue, obviously, and I think they may have done this to one-up that, would be Rise of the Resistance, when you come into the hangar and you see all the stormtroopers and the massive scale of that. Like, that one is a very similar scale in many ways. But the thing about Rise of the Resistance is you can't linger in there. The cast members will move you along very quickly because you are, being apprehended. You are currently captured by the First Order. And so it's really hard to really take that all in and really appreciate it. In here, once you go through the Metro Flu, you can hang out in here and take pictures. They have a place where they sell like water and drinks and things like that. Like, you can sit here and really just sort of take it all in before you actually get into the queue. So they have an area when you come in, and the queue, again, doesn't start. They have more turnstiles as you get closer to the statues. So you can get your pictures in here. You can sit here. If you want, you can just stare at it for a little bit. So there's nobody really trying to usher you, make you go quicker through here, which I think is very nice. You get to actually just take this in and take your pictures, take your videos, whatever you want to do. There's no rush about that. And that is something that I really, really did enjoy about this ride queue and this experience, was you didn't feel this pressure that you had to keep moving because, either people were behind you or team members were telling you to hurry up, that you didn't have that at all. And I think in terms of experiencing a queue like that, they obviously built it for you to have that sort of like, oh my goodness, I'm here in the Ministry of Magic. So the queue itself is also kind of unique in that they play the whole role of you're obviously in line, but you're in line to get on an elevator to go see Dolores Umbridge's trial. So you're obviously in line to ride a ride, but they play it off in here as if everybody here is lined up because it is the day of Dolores Umbridge's trial. And obviously this is a big deal in the Wizarding world, and this is why you're here. So it's kind of unique how they do that, because you're going through, and it really does feel like you are going through an office building, the Ministry of Magic, and not just in a ride queue. The way they have helped this thing set up, there's hallways, there's offices, locker rooms, like you're going throughout all the Ministry of Magic, but it doesn't feel like it was there for you. It feels like you are walking in on it on the day that this is how this place operates. You just happen to be here on the day of the trial to witness that. Now, as far as I know, I'm pretty sure the story with this is not based off of any books. I think this is just sort of an extension off of the original movies, because I don't recall anything about Dolores Umbridge going on trial. And obviously, you might be shocked to hear this, she's not going to go away quietly.
What did you say?
She has some ideas and tricks up her sleeve. And there's some cool things you go through, and there's the room with the former ministers of the Ministry of Magic, and they all are having discussions about Dolores Umbridge and different things, sort of gossipy in different ways. And a lot of them are from the movie. So that's kind of cool to see that, as they're just sort of talking to each other, not interacting with anybody in the queue or anything like that, but you kind of see that. You go through locker room, and in the locker room you see the locker of Harry, Neville Longbottom, and Ron Weasley. Kind of take a look in there and see that. You also will see what it's almost like Starbucks coffee and like pastry drinks in bags of Ministry of Magic version of this. You see this all throughout the queue, and the bag and the coffee will say Ministry of Munchies. So it's kind of interesting. That's just, again, it's like you are just here on a day and people have coffee and things they're eating in their offices and things like that. There's definitely lots of, if you're a Harry Potter fan, if you've watched the movies, read the books, there's going to be tons of Easter eggs in here as you're waiting in line. You can really check out and see things, including in one of the rooms, there's like this magical vacuum that is vacuum up papers. But if you look on there, some of the papers are well-known wizards that the papers are getting vacuumed up and things like that. So there's some really cool touches in here. And it's very much a mix of an office building, but it's a magical office building. So it's kind of interesting how that's sort of like, if you were just a wizard type of person working in an office building, it would kind of operate this way. It's kind of the idea behind it. You also go through a building. It's the Aurora's office. I think that's how you say that. You see Mad-Eye Moody, which we had just been watching through the movies again. So you see his portrait on there, and you see the case that has been built against Dolores Umbridge. Like, it's part of this is you see all that going on. They are having conversations, like the portraits within each other. So again, you have more of that aspect of it. You see Neville Longbottom's parents' portrait on there as well, talking to Mad-Eye Moody. So, some of the, like I said, Easter eggs in here. If you know the movies and the books, you'll see a lot of things in here where you're like, oh, that's really cool. You also go into a room where it seems Dolores Umbridge's belongings are being packed away. Not really sure as to why, but it's like they're being, rounded up and getting packed away, put into boxes and sent somewhere. Then you go into Dolores Umbridge's office. You see Higgledy, which is the house elf of Dolores Umbridge. She talks and gives you some background information on maybe some things you can expect. Then after this room, like a lot of the rides in Epic Universe, you go up some stairs. So there are some stairs involved with this. Again, all of this is insanely themed with the tiles and just the way in which the building, the office building of Ministry of Magic looks. It plays into that as well. So you go up the stairs, and then you get to where you get onto the elevators, and this is where you board the ride vehicle. So actually, when we got in here, you kind of go down, they ask how many people, and they kind of tell you to stand to the side. I was assuming this maybe takes you to a different area, but you actually board the ride elevators right there. So I was just like, oh, it's right here. I didn't realize it was going to be just right where it was at. So then you get onto the ride elevator, you buckle in, and I will say the ride vehicles with the elevator and the seats, it really looks cool. It's very Tower of Terror-esque in many ways of like that style. And you get on there and they tell you like, all right, we're going to get you to the trial now. I'm not going to go like scene by scene, give you like spoilers or anything like that.
No spoilers.
And you go away. And as soon as the ride starts, you get the sense of scale immediately in the first scene. And very similar to like Monsters Unchained. The first time I rode that, where I was just like, oh my goodness, it's so massive and so much stuff going on. This is even more than that. And the minute you get in here, you realize I understand why this ride goes down all the time, because there's so many working pieces with this. Very similar yet again to Rise of the Resistance. Whenever that ride had its issues for a long period of time, once I was able to ride that, you realize why this ride has issues, because there's so many moving pieces. The same thing with this one. So you can understand working through a lot of these ride issues. You're thinking, okay, it makes sense. Like, this is a massive undertaking to do this ride, and I can imagine one thing goes wrong and they got to reset everything and all the things that might go into running this actual attraction. Obviously, you're going to Dolores Umbridge's trial. You see Harry, Ron, and Hermione as they are going as well. And Dolores Umbridge gets loose due to some help from some Death Eaters as she wants to get her hands on a time turner to go back to the time of Lord Voldemort. So that is the whole thing of this. And obviously Ron, Harry, and Hermione are trying to stop her from doing that. And so you encounter different scenes. There's a really cool scene that involves a time turner in the time room, and it like disintegrates and does some things like that. You encounter Death Eaters that are animatronics, or most of them. And I will just say the animatronics that Universal is doing for not only for Monsters Unchained, but for this ride, if you would have told me that that was an actual person, I would believe you. They look so fluid in their movements. Like, they look like real people. And there's really, obviously there's screens involved in this. There's no 3D glasses. They're using those very high def screens that they've been using on a lot of attractions. And the mix of the screens with the animatronics, it's really hard to tell where the animatronic starts and the screen ends and things like that. It's all very immersed very well. So obviously you go through here and you are being attacked by Dolores Umbridge, you're being attacked by Death Eaters. I do think there has been a change to this, because in the part, there's a slight drop in part of it, but it's not a very big drop at all. And I have heard that has been toned down. So I'm kind of wondering if they made that change to try and make this ride more reliable, as I was hearing that some of the floor, like there's floor sensors and seat sensors, and perhaps that drop was causing some issues, triggering those sensors. So for us, the drop wasn't big. I was kind of expecting there to be some sort of bigger drop, but it was very slight. I didn't really feel it too much, but I think that has been toned down in this. And there's a lot of scenes where, you know, they see you and they use their wand and they push you away, or they drop you down, so it's like a lot of you're just in an elevator. You're not actively doing things. So like, you know, Transformers, like you're part of the battle. This one is, you're there seeing what's going on, and you have Harry, Ron, and Hermione that are fighting against her, and you are just sort of there. So you kind of, you know, you're just sort of watching it. Sometimes they do things to you. They turn their attention to you. And the elevator movements are like wizarding type. It's not like up and down. It's like you're floating and you're going. So the whole thing feels like you are floating around the entire time and experiencing, you know, you're going side to side and front to back and up and down. Like, you're just going in various directions the entire time to, you know, going through this whole ride. But the blend of the screens with the animatronics, it is insanely well done. It creates such a it's like the purpose of like the old 3D glasses in the ride, trying to feel like it's there in front of you. Like, they make that happen through the animatronics and the usage of the screens, the really high def version of them. And it really does feel like you are there. Like, you are witnessing this thing. It doesn't really feel like you're watching it on a screen as much as you are just part of this action. And again, the Death Eaters animatronics are, again, they look like a person. If one ever goes down and they just want to put a person in there, I don't know if anybody would notice. It really does look that impressive for what they've done in here. And you go to different scenes. Obviously, there's battles going on. You also have a scene with a rumpant, I think is what it's called. It's one of the magical creatures where they kind of bash around some elevators. But these battles ensue. Harry, Ron, and Hermione are fighting with Dolores. But you just witness battles. Awesome scenes, like fighting scenes going on. Like, you see quite a few different scenes in this thing, and the entire time it is just very enjoyable, very immersive, and it is, I'm sure the entire time I had a giant grin on my face. And then you are soon off of the ride. So as you get off this, you are, at least for me, a whirlwind trying to process everything that you've witnessed, and you are into the gift shop. And the first thing I wanted to do was ride this again. So my thoughts on the ride itself. In Epic Universe, I did a previous video talking about the ranking of the rides and putting Monsters Unchained number 1 because I haven't got to ride this one yet. This one is the best ride in Epic Universe. It's better than Rise of the Resistance. The usage of the animatronics with the screens is very, very well done. Now, there are, I would say, some critiques of this. It is very screen-based, but again, the screens are these very, very high-def screens that they've been using. I think very similar to like the Bourne Stuntacular, how they use those. And you've seen this in Monsters Unchained as well. So the screens are very, very lifelike almost. It looks like you're realistically looking almost. It didn't take me out of it or ruin it. There are some people, though, I think will say it's an over-reliance on screens. But I do like this concept of these high-def, vivid screens with these very advanced animatronics. I think it does a really cool effect of, it's like the 3D glasses without having to have the 3D glasses on, of just bringing it to life in front of you. For as good as Monsters Unchained is, I think they do it even better on here. But the best scenes are the ones that are a blend of the screens and the animatronics and everything going on there. And if it has been toned down, I do wonder, in terms of the drop and other things like that, I do wonder if that gets maybe put back in at some point, as I think they are still tweaking with this ride, trying to get it more reliable. And obviously this ride's reliability is an issue. It is one they will fix. It's, again, there are a lot of similarities between this ride and Rise of the Resistance in terms of being, very advanced, and a lot of things with this are going to be unreliable for a period of time. But Rise of the Resistance eventually, fixed a lot of its issues, much more reliable now. This one will also. But the fact they're not using virtual line for this, I think, is a major win for this park. And this is easily the highlight of what Universal Creative has ever done at this point. I mean, with this park, it's an amazing attraction. I want to ride it again. I think that it is better than Rise of the Resistance. I think, obviously, Epic Universe, I'm going to put this number 1. I think in terms of all theme park attractions, it is easily, to me, it's easily a top 3. I really need to think more on just where I would rank it overall, but it is definitely in the running for the best theme park attraction I've ever seen. It is a marvel of what they were able to do, from the queue to the ride. The way they did everything. There's so many little elements of just walking into the Metro Flu, being flung, all of a sudden you're in the Ministry of Magic, you're in these elevators. It is, if you're a Harry Potter fan, you will absolutely love this. It tells a really cool story. It's a continuation from the movies and the books. So that's something that I think is kind of pretty cool and unique. And I loved it. I get why it breaks down all the time. Once you get on there, you're like, this makes complete sense. The scale of the building itself, the show building, is part of it. I was just, floor to ceiling. It is just a huge, huge area you are going through. So nothing was forced perspective. Everything is at scale. I can't even imagine the cost of this attraction to build it. I'm sure it was the most expensive attraction probably ever built, from the size of the show building to the queue to all the details in here. It is the shining achievement of Universal's creative team. It really is. I mean, they took all the things they were able to do the last decade and put this into one attraction, and it's great. I don't know what else to say. It's a fantastic attraction. I give it. Some people asked me in the last video what would it take to give it a 10. I typically don't give out 10s because I think there's always room for improvement. So if we're going on a little bit of the overuse of screens, and some of the timing on it here and there, and the audio is kind of off as they still work through those, and obviously the unreliability of it. So we're factoring those things in. I would probably say a 9.8, 9.9. I mean, it's almost a 10. I guess you could just say how unreliable this ride is at this moment can give it some knocks here, but I tend to kind of overlook that given just how ambitious this ride is, and it seems like it's another one where they wanted to do this. They developed this idea, and they're just like, we don't care. We're going to do this. And so I can be forgiving of some of the issues with the ride in terms of the reliability of it and working through some of these issues. But it's a fantastic experience. It's a great headlining attraction for this park. And it is one where I think people are absolutely going to love this. I know some people like Monsters better. I love Monsters Unchained, but I do think Battle of the Ministry is a couple of steps above this one for sure in terms of the immersion, the scale, the realism of it, everything they were able to accomplish from the queue as well. I think it is, Battle at the Ministry is 1, and it's not even 1A, 1B. I think Battle at the Ministry is 1, and then Monsters Unchained is just 2. But both are fantastic. I'm not taking anything away from Monsters Unchained, but that experience at Battle at the Ministry is just something I've never experienced like that in a theme park before. So I think it's worthy of the praise and the hype it's gotten. For me personally, if it is a 180-minute wait, I will wait for that to do this again. I would. I really would. Not many attractions I would say are worth that. Hagrid's is another one where, if it's 90 minutes, I'll wait for that. If this one is definitely under 90 minutes, go do this right away if you're in the park. If you've never done this, I think that the wait time is worth the payoff you get going through the queue and everything. I was glad we got to ride it after having so many issues trying to ride it, but all was forgiven once we got off the attraction. I wish I could go back and witness it without having ridden it before, just because I think the first time you go through it is such a unique experience to see it all and kind of try and take it all in. But I do want to ride it again, to just go back in and just really sort of focus more on these scenes and what's going on. Because some of it is like the story's going on, but you're so mesmerized by everything going on around you that you kind of lose track of what's going on with the story. Because there were just some parts of this ride where you're just like, wow, like you can't really focus on the story as you're focusing on the elements that are in front of you. And I think that's a great thing to have happen. I think if you're able to pull off an attraction where you're just absolutely mesmerized by what you're seeing, and then you're like, what happened in the ride? You're like, I don't remember parts of it. I just remember the Death Eater was there and it looked like a person. And I was trying to look at it and be like, is that a person? Because it looks like a person. And that's kind of like what goes on in this ride a lot of the times. I do wonder about the best way to experience it. So rope dropping it could be something to do, although I think most people are going to rope drop Ministry of Magic to ride this attraction. So it probably makes more sense to wait later in the day, because this did get down to 90-minute wait. And I think at one point it's down to like a 60-minute wait. So I think a better strategy might be to rope drop other areas and then, do this attraction later on in the day when most people in the park have already done it. Because you got to think too, they're not allowing park hopping going on during this time period with Epic Universe. So people in the park a lot of people are probably going to try and do this first thing in the morning. So later in the day, there's not as much demand for it potentially. So that's kind of the method I think I would probably implore trying to do this. So that was my experience and my thoughts on this. And if you are curious about it, if it lives up to the hype, in my opinion, I do think it does. And I think it's one that I would have a hard time believing somebody rides this and they think they just hated it. I think there are probably people who are going to critique certain things, but it's hard to argue against the experience that Universal's creative team was able to pull off with this. And it's unlike anything else I've ever ridden, personally speaking. The closest, again, would be Rise of the Resistance, but I think this is another level even above Rise of the Resistance. But that's just my thoughts on this. By the way, that's going to be it, though, for this video. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel, as we do lots of coverage here of Universal Studios, Epic Universe, Disney World, and pop culture. And let us know in the comments, what do you think about Battle at the Ministry, and where would you rank it in terms of theme park attractions in Epic Universe and overall? And until next time, we will see you in the parks.